Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So the objective today is to learn about PEAC's mission, to learn the role of the parent consultant, and basically to identify those of you who want to become a parent consultant. So let me tell you a little bit about PEAC. PEAC began as a grassroots effort in 2000, and it was between family members, higher education professors, and even school district personnel who came together and said that we need to have some place to really work with families so that they have their voice at the table. And PEAC started very small, but mighty. In 2000 and was incorporated in 2004, and it began its mission to apply for grants where it gained money so that it was able to carry out its mission and to expand. And so the overall idea for PEAC is collaboration towards successful, inclusive experiences. And that means throughout the life of the individual. We focus on these areas of working with families, of building self-advocates, of working with universities and colleges. We have community members who we bring into this mix and those who are really interested in helping in this space. And we work with schools in terms of the students and teachers by providing information. So we do this in three ways. We have individualized supports to all of these stakeholders. We give, if they need assistance, we provide them with resources. We provide them with recommendations on things that could be done to meet their needs. And we also work with them and the IEP meeting. Now, we are not advocates, and you're going to hear that a lot. We are not advocates. So we do not speak for the parent at the meeting because that's not PEAC's purpose. Our purpose is to empower the parent to use their voice. So we will work with them on what they say, how to build their agenda. At the IEP meeting, we can talk to the parent, share our ideas with the parent, let the parent speak. And that's very important. We are not advocates, so we are not getting paid for this from the parent. Unless it is a fee-based situation, and we can talk about that to parent consultants specifically. But it's very important that that's noted, and that's noted with the school district at the IEP meeting as well. We do trainings. We have specific training modules that we have on how to have successful inclusive environments. We have trainings on how to collaborate as a team, what that means. So we have other trainings, and we're building trainings for these particular stakeholders. And then we provide technical assistance. And the difference between technical assistance and support is technical assistance is really honing in on areas of the law, things that each of these stakeholders might need in terms of just helping them understand inclusion, helping them understand special education services, helping them understand that special education is not a place, it is a service that can occur any place. And so it's that type of information that we impart to these stakeholders. So what we believe is this, what you see on this slide. All children should be successfully educated together in their neighborhood schools within the general education curriculum. And these certain words are highlighted for a reason. When we say all children, we mean all children. Whether a child is, has a nurse and is in a hospital bed in the classroom, whether a child is blind, or if a child, has the most significant behavioral concerns, all children should be successfully educated together in their neighborhood schools, and successfully educated so that they have meaningful participation. And it's their neighborhood school so that they are among their friends in the neighborhood. They are with their community and not someplace else. And then, of course, within the general education curriculum. So it's not something separate. It's not that they're learning what every other student is learning in that district. They're learning it at their level. They're learning it at in terms of the big picture. ideas. It's not an issue of them earning their way to learn the general curriculum, but no matter where they are learning that general education curriculum. And so our final slide on PEAC is that our mission is really to promote education, but inclusive education, so that all learners, through collaboration with families, people with disabilities, schools, colleges, universities, and other stakeholders, that through this collaboration, we create inclusive communities. And I turn it over to Tamia.
Okay. Parents equal experts. Parents are experts based on their experience of knowing their child and navigating the world of special education services. What that means is, I don't know how many times I've been told that I am my child's first teacher. That's it. We are the first teacher. We know our kids. So we have to learn the special education services world so that we can fight for our children. And we have to also share it with others, because there's others that don't have any education on the special education services. Next slide, please. Members of the PCN are parents of children who receive special education services, committed to inclusive education for all children, strengthened by the collective wisdom of parents who have been there, supported by experts who are committed to uplifting the voice of parents. What that means is we work together. We have regular PCN meetings, such as practicing opportunities. We get to talk amongst ourselves and conversate on the new processes for special education. We get to train and do workshops for PCNs to increase knowledge. We access resources and experts. There's tons out there. We just have to go through them. Next slide, please. Members of the PCN are parents of children who receive special education. What they're doing is they're learning to peer support. We get to speak to other parents. Like Ms. Linda said, we're not advocates, so we get to talk amongst each other. We get to support each other. We get to invite guests to lecture and teach us new ways to talk to each other, to talk to those a part of our special education team. We have professional learning modules to train groups of teachers and educators and other family members. This is our opportunity to learn amongst ourselves. It's not just geared to the education or just geared to the teachers. It's geared to us as family members as well.
Okay. So, oh no, is this yours, Tamia, or mine?
No, that's yours.
Okay, so the parent consultant job description is, I had emailed that out to everyone, and it's somewhat lengthy, but again, I have to reiterate that we are consulting, we are not advocates, so we're just sharing. And so what Tamia had mentioned about that peer-to-peer support, what that looks like is that we get requests from family members or teachers, sometimes service providers, who want information or have certain needs and need to know some recommendations. That comes into our central calling area. Then a form is completed that is now kind of gives the summary for that particular need. Parent consultants will be emailed to say, you won't be given the details, but you'll be given some of you won't be given the name of the person, you'll be given the district, you'll be given what the issue is. And then we'll ask the parent consultant who wants to take on this particular role, who wants to help this particular parent. That comes in, again, to the central area. The central person who will be Mary Ann, will make that determination on who now gets that specific information for that parent. Then that is emailed, and then hands off in terms of the administrative part of PEAC, that is now between the parent consultant and the parent. Understanding that things are confidential, understanding that that is a safe space for family members, providers, teachers to speak, and that they will now talk and figure out what is needed for this particular parent. We have a network because you can always call on other parent consultants to ask for assistance. Sometimes what I get is an email to say, this is what I want to say to the parent. Do you have anything to add? What do you think about this? So that type of thing is why we have this network. You're never alone. There might be someone else who has another option. And then we have this depot of information that you can always share with families. The parent consultant job description talks about that in a little bit more about what the expectations are for parent consultants. And it also talks about the possibility of being paid if we get grant funding. If we don't, it's usually on a volunteer basis, and we keep the recorded time so that when as PEAC gets donors who provide us with funding, we can pay parent consultants retroactively. And then examples of parent consultant work. Tamia, give an example.
So example, I've done presentations for some of the universities. Some of the professors from different colleges asked for parent consultants to come and share their experiences with a brand new class of new teachers. So I've shared my experience. I even gave input on different techniques or different ways that they can communicate with parents. I've had one teacher ask me how do I communicate with a parent that is having difficulties in the special education services? And I gave her some techniques that worked well with me.
Thank you. Okay, so as I had mentioned, you get paid if we have funding that comes right away. Well, relatively right away. And just to know that every person who is a parent consultant is already a leader. You're already a leader. You're a leader with the IEP that you've already been dealing with and all the teams that you've been dealing with. And so as we speak with you as leaders, we are talking to you, our parent consultant leaders. And the important thing is that people need to hear your story, because when we talk in this world of special education services and they mention family, they use it in one context all the time, right? Well, the family feels, or we do this for the family, and they're talking about families of multiple children, but every family's journey is different. There are some similarities, but every journey is different. And so everyone needs to hear the different stories so that they understand the parent and the family's perspective. And we'll help you develop that voice. We'll help you develop that voice for other families. What does that look like, where you are not imparting only your perspective, right? They're hearing a very general perspective, not just your story, to other families. Oops. Okay. Tamia?
Okay, so the next steps, we'll send you a PCN document online, complete if you wish to become a parent consultant. What I'm gonna do is I'm also going to put it in our chat.
Thank you.
Okay, it's in the chat. If you're interested in joining the parent consultant network, fill out the form. One of the things that we're going to ask is that you identify your skills, your preferences. Not everyone do the same thing. Not everyone wants to do an IEP clinic. Not everyone wants to go to an IEP meeting. Maybe a parent would just want to talk to someone to vent. you could be that parent that they vent to and probably give them some resources. So on the form, we're asking for you to also identify your skill, your preference. Our PCN meeting date. Our first training for all PCNs to develop your presentation. The date will be to be announced. Right now, we're just trying to build the network, and we'll let you know at a later date what will be our first training date.
Thank you. And we definitely want your input on this. What days are better for us to have this session? What time in the day is better? We just need your input on that. And since you are our first group of interested families, you're going to direct us into to determining what's the best date for the first parent consultant meeting. Now, we have other parent consultants who have been consulting for years. And so this is going to be that meeting where everyone is invited to. So it will be a much larger group. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute after the recording, so we can get some dates. And then we move on now to the questions piece. Do you have any questions?
This is Melissa. I wrote down a couple questions. I'm just waiting for my computer to catch up with my life.
Okay.
Is there like a guide or specific expectation list? Like when we say we're going to be a parent consultant, like I know that I had an advocate and there was like so much that you could really kind of request, but like, is there like a hard stop or hard limits as far as like, what's the expectation? Or is that really kind of like up to us? Because I'm asking about, I had one parent who told me she wanted me to ghostwrite some emails for her because she really struggled with her own disabilities and struggled with some wording. So I would ghostwrite, send to her, and then ask her to review and advise for it. Like, you know, is this kind of what you're trying to say? Or we would meet and we would talk about how she can present this information, because she's like, you know, I don't really know how to say this to them without being offensive, because as a parent, I understand like when our emotions run really high, we kind of lose some of that like logical sensibility to say like, okay, I don't hate my LEA, I don't want to kill my LEA, but like I am so frustrated with repeating myself, and maybe my message just needs to come from a different angle. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, is there like guidelines that will kind of help us like discuss our practice with them? Like if we're supposed to be, you know, assisting the parents, at what point or where is it that PEAC wants us to kind of draw the line in how much assistance we offer?
That is totally up to you. We leave that up to you, depending on how comfortable you are. And again, it's a network. So if there's anything you feel uncomfortable with, you can always seek assistance from another parent consultant. If there's anything that is that you personally feel is burdensome. You know, I had parents who called me every day. And so I had to tell them, okay, it's time for you to pick up the ball and not call me every day, right? Like so you have to set your own limits, because it's really going to be very different situations. You can ghostwrite if you want. I've done that many times, and that makes sense if a person doesn't feel comfortable writing. But then the whole point is you're not going to do that every time, right? You're sending the template, or you're setting up the basics on how it should be written. You're explaining how you are layering, as I call it, your letter, so that it's a template in a sense that they can use anytime.
Yeah, like I have a consultant who I use because I just don't think anybody should ever go to an IEP meeting by themselves. I think that you can either go in whatever aspect, either to just take notes or to just kind of reaffirm what the parent is stating, or maybe restate what the parent is saying. If the team just kind of keeps to circling around back to an issue, you kind of say, what I think mom is trying to express is.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you.
I meet with my consultant.
We don't say so what we do at PEAC, and when we talk about those trainings, what we're going to tell you is what the minimum is. right? This
Mm-hmm.
is the minimum of the approach. The maximum is up to you, but this is the minimum. And one of the things, and the reason I stopped you is one of the things we do is we talk about language. We don't say mom. We don't say dad. We don't say that in the IEP because that's disrespectful. And IEP people need to know that, right? People on the team need to know to call me mom is disrespectful. I don't call you teacher, right? You want me to call you mister? You don't call me mom. I'm not your mother, right? We have to set the tone, and that's what we do. We set the tone in a very nice way. Excuse me, that's not my name. My name is not mom, right? So I'm stopping you because we talk about language, and language is very important. The other piece that we do is, like I said, we set a minimum. There are some givens, some things that are things that we understand automatically, right? Things like when you write a letter, you always end with a question and you give a date by which you need that question responded. So that's always part of the template, right? Another given is you always call you can call an IEP meeting anytime, right? So you call an IEP meeting, and if everybody can't attend, that's not an IEP meeting. So there's certain givens that we have, right, that we have to make sure that families know. And so again, in the trainings, we outline what those givens are. So you'll always have your minimums on what you're going to explain to families. And then the maximum is up to you.
Okay, that's helpful. So that's going to come in like a future training.
Mhm.
Usually when I support parents, I kind of go over the procedural safeguards with them and say, what of these things concerned you the most? And that kind of like sets the stage for them to be like, well, I didn't know I could do this, or I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I was entitled to this. And that's kind of where I start. But I'm glad that you mentioned all of those things, Linda, because I think that would be really helpful, because I don't want to represent PEAC or anything else outside of like what it's supposed to be presented as. That's really important to me, is that I know that I'm acting as a representation of PEAC, and that I never cross the boundary that is supposed to be crossed. So, my consultant, she'll write things for me because I'm so angry. I tell her, I'm so angry, I don't even know what to say. It'll go on for a week, and she's like, listen, we have to address this. If you're still really heated or upset about this, can I help you write something? And I'll take her letter and I will revise it however my voice needs to be said. And that's kind of what I was talking about. But I'm glad that you mentioned those things, because to me, when they call me mom, it's like they're calling me the president. I kind of look at it as like an entitlement. So those things I think would be helpful for me.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Marianne.
Do we have a list, like you say, we don't do advocacy, so if the client needs advocacy, do we have that list consolidated? Like, here's the legal advocacy, here's the other advocacy. We have a consolidated list.
So we have to be extremely careful with recommendations, right? Because once you recommend someone or an organization, that means you endorse them. That means automatically PEAC is saying that this person is good, right?
I don't mean a specific person. I mean, like, there's, the Educational Law Center, there's like websites that actually have letters on how to ask for things and stuff like that. And advocacy people, like there's the Office of Advocacy and Reform that has a child advocate in it now in the state of Pennsylvania, stuff like that.
We have resources that we'll put on the website that people can reference. We'll have that. We have some, I was going to say handouts, but we have some documents that can be emailed that give some suggestions. But again, I'm just going back to saying we have to just be very careful, because once we indicate something, that means that PEAC endorses it. And so it's not just so much of saying that they do good work. Sometimes you have to look a little deeper to see what they support, right? Because it may not align with our mission. When it comes to an advocate, per se, a person who charges for their services, there are a few, one specifically that I know of an advocate certification, but to my knowledge, there's no national advocate certification that has been, what do you call it? Confirmed, right? As a bona fide certification. It's kind of like assistive tech person. Like there's one organization that everybody kind of goes to, but it's just by default has been determined that it's been confirmed as a bona fide certification, but there's no real certification. So I say that to say anybody can call themselves an advocate.
Yeah,
in
well,
charge,
there's the new
right?
office. It's a new office of child advocacy. They're still working on it with the new governor that might come out.
Right, but you're
Um,
talking about a state
Yes,
entity. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking
Okay.
about individual advocates. Sometimes people ask for an individual advocate. And so we have advocates that we know of, but I tend not to recommend an advocate because of that issue. I don't know how good they are, and I don't know if their position aligns with PEAC. So you might have an advocate out there who does not understand inclusion as well as we do and may be steering in a different way, right? So that's all I'm saying, is that we just have to be very careful. So we go to what's on our website, and we go to those things that we have already have as a list, of people or organizations that we know of. And we kind of stick with that. Now that can be built and added to for sure, but it takes some vetting to do that. Does that answer your question?
yes, that's good to know.
Okay.
I think I had like a little bit of the same line of questioning. So if like we progress to a point where this parent kind of wants to go to mediation because we're not able to come to an agreement with what's being proposed by the school. I know that I had some issues with my son being placed in the back of the room with a desk by himself, and I was like outraged by it. And they weren't willing to change some of that stuff. So at that point, I would either request mediation or go to due process over the fact that like they were isolating my child for no real
So
reason.
that's an option, but we also provide other options for that. So just saying, but so that particular
So in that
issue,
situation,
we call in
that's-
our partners.
right, that situation, we were not in a place to like come to an agreement. So it was either mediation or, if they didn't agree to mediation, then we would have to just kind of go to due process. Is there a limit on where you guys want us to kind of say like, all right, like I know this parent is going to need legal representation. How do you want us to handle things that kind of like exceed our?
And we'll go into that more in the training that we do with the other parent consultants. But again, we have our list of references. So we would just refer to the list that we have. There's multiple options for everything. For every situation, there are multiple options.
I feel like I was in a science lesson with you, Linda. For every action, there's a reaction.
Exactly. There's multiple options. And we have partners, right? We partner very closely with PEAC, who is the state parent assistant center, right? So they have a lot more resources than we do. We partner with HUNE, they have a lot more resources. We have these partners who have other resources, and we also have members of our PEAC network, who are very helpful that we can always go to as well, who will include attorneys. So we would just refer that out. We don't go to mediation. We can. I've been to arbitration. I've been to mediation. I mean, we can. It would be up to you to do. But you would have to be super comfortable with that and feel and know what your role would be, not as an advocate in those situations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to
Mhm.
mediation a couple times. I've been to mediation with my kids and with other parents, and it was always do you want me to come, or are you comfortable going yourself? Would you rather have someone else there? Do you want me to just come and stand by? Like, I always ask,
Right.
like, what
Right.
level of participation do you prefer me having? And that's kind of how I've always left it, but I just didn't want to go to mediation and be like, this is the PEAC person. And I'm like, I just wanted to know where our organization lies within that process.
Mhm. Typically, Typically for official meetings, we are PEAC, but more importantly, we're a friend of the family. So we're not representing PEAC in the scope of this very formal meeting. We're representing the family. We're a friend of the family.
So if we were to go into any type of official meeting, we should just not say that we're representative of an organization, or we should just say that we are a peer parent assisting?
Um,
Do we have a position statement on that?
we are a friend of the family.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm. We are not there to put anyone, make anyone defensive. We're there to offer suggestions based on our own experiences that may help. We're always collaborative, right? We use those collaborative language terms. We are not there to put anyone, make anyone uneasy.
Linda, I don't know how open districts are to hearing our message and stuff like that. I know that like our smaller charter school has always kind of been a little combative when it comes to bringing in parents to speak to other parents. It's almost like they don't want us to like spread the message of like parent power and empowerment. Is there situations where we would be able to present some information to districts or go as like partners to kind of like present information on inclusion, or with our partners just to kind of help us become more well-rounded in this stuff?
So the way it works is we are invited in to talk to school districts based on usually someone who has heard our message. Our message of collaboration is focused on collaboration. We are not parent heavy in our conversations, right? Because everyone's equal at the table. Again, language is very important. So our message is not family empowerment when we talk to school districts. Our message is that of collaboration, of how you can do successful inclusion. It's hearing the parent story on success, not on challenges, unless those challenges yielded success. Do you understand what I mean? So you'll know more as you see an example of how the modules are presented. And again, we'll do that at a parent consultant meeting. And you'll see that, but that's where the power is to ensure everyone understands what happens at that IEP team meeting and how that is structured to give everyone the same equal voice, including the student, and what that looks like. It's a very different dynamic than some people are used to in an IEP meeting where there's this hierarchy. Our goal is to remove the hierarchy. And that's where you have success, when everybody feels that they have true ownership into this conversation. That's the inclusion model. So you'll see that more as we demonstrate in our, especially in our next meeting. Our next meeting is when you're actually going to see a presentation demonstrated, and we'll start working on what your presentation will look like. Any other questions? Okay. So I am going to stop the recording and thank you for this session.